Mrs. Thatcher spoke yesterday of Mr. Kinnock's weasel words over responsibility for previous violence. Today she expressed her absolute horror at the rioting.
Nothing that warrants this. The place to discuss these matters is Parliament. These people are totally against democracy.
The person in the end who delivered the coup de grace was Geoffrey Howe. And this was over the issue of Europe. It was to do with a plan that the then President of the European Commission, Jacques Delors, had put forward, and there were 3 points on it. And she dealt with these 3 points and she set them out to the House of Commons, and then she said, I can't remember quite the precise words, but the 3 words that mattered were her response to it: no, no, no. And thereupon, Geoffrey Howe, above all, decided that was it.
He seemed such a mild man, a nice man really, which he was, but he came to disagree with her very violently. Eventually she replaced him as Chancellor, but he then stood up in the House of Commons and made a speech which was the first direct attack on her leadership. And I think it was stunning because anybody dared to do it. But the fact that it was Geoffrey Howe, of all people, it had all the more impact.
The tragedy is, and it is for me personally, for my party, for our whole people, and for my right honourable friend herself, a very real tragedy, that the Prime Minister's perceived attitude towards Europe is running increasingly serious risks for the future of our nation. It risks minimising our influence and maximising our chances of being once again shut out. It's rather like sending your opening batsmen to the crease, only for them to find, the moment the first balls are bowled, that their bats have been broken before the game by the team captain.
Well, it wasn't my intention. My intention was to try and make a warning quite clear that the policy that was being followed from her part, rather than in line with what we tried to agree, wasn't likely to be the right one. And I wasn't setting out to change the structure. But don't forget there were many other factors by then. The poll tax particularly had alienated many of our backbenchers from supporting her, and they all came together with what happened.
I'd been brought up in a rather conventional middle-class way, so to defer to ladies, you couldn't defer to Mrs. Thatcher and survive.
It did not seem to me at that stage it would be difficult to get 3 or 4 more people to vote with us on the second ballot. And although it was not very easy to go to a second ballot, it didn't seem to me to be very difficult. I most earnestly believe that I shall be in number 10 Downing Street at the end of this week, and a little bit longer than that.
The last few weeks of the Thatcher time were absolutely astonishing. From the feeling that Margaret Thatcher would almost never be removed from office, suddenly, it was like watching a sandcastle, and the waves suddenly lashed up against the sandcastle, and the sandcastle suddenly went like that.
Something happened while I was away that night. There were various meetings all over the place. I think in London, I couldn't obviously be here, and when I got back the next morning, it still seemed to me that I would have a good chance. But during the day, I got on with starting to get the confidence motion ready, and then thought I simply must see the cabinet and some other people. And it was just very strange. Have you seen a situation slip away from you? I'm a politician. I know. I can feel it. I can sense it. And when some people whom I expected to be absolutely staunch had very different views, said, look, I will support you, but I don't think that, that it is a foregone conclusion, then all right, no general can fight without a really good army behind.
Well, we know really that it was Denis Thatcher who was at his feet very firmly on the ground, who again, rather like Prince Philip and the Queen, was a very good advisor of her. I mean, he could say when things worked and didn't work, and he just said, well, it's time to go, the game is up, and that's when she stepped aside.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're leaving Downing Street for the last time after 11 and a half wonderful years And we're very happy that we leave the United Kingdom in a very, very much better state than when we came here 11.5 years ago. You don't take a decision like that without it being difficult, without heartbreak. Heartbreak there may have been, but it was the right decision.
I think that most of the ministers who kind of gave their advice were not people who were going to start voting the other way or abstaining. I think what they were saying was, look, you know, we've been loyal to you, we're friends of yours, we think this is all ghastly, but we do have to tell you we don't think you're going to win, and in those circumstances, we think that you should stand down. What we do not want to see is you being humiliated by being defeated.
What went wrong was that we did not get a big enough majority on the first ballot. And there's nothing I could do to cure that. That was the thing I couldn't get over. They said to me as I went through it, but you haven't been to ask us to vote for you. Other people have. And I thought, goodness me, do I, after 11.5 years, have to go and ask personally for a vote? I remember previous leadership elections. But there you are. They thought that I did, and I thought that that was not necessarily the right way to do it.
I think it was a whole bringing together of all kinds of emotions. She could not understand how, never having lost an election and never having lost a major vote in the House of Commons, that this could ever have happened to her. She just, in a sense, in the modern phrase, didn't get it.
By the time you've been a Prime Minister, say, for 11.5 years, I think doing the things which I had managed to do, I felt that one should have more authority and backing from one's own party than I had if I hadn't, right, we needed a change. It really was as clear-cut as that.
I think that, yes, those interviews were interesting, not least because when I got her to recall the events of those final 10 days or so, she burst into tears again in the middle of the interview. And we had to stop it and let her just go and refix her makeup. Yes, it was seared into her soul.
That, though, the image that people will perhaps remember, you said the cabinet was extremely difficult. And then you had to come out into Downing Street and you had to face the cameras. In effect, you had to face the world. You had to come and make what was perhaps the statement of your life. And then I see that, you know, we notice now that it's affecting you now, and it must have been
yes,
the most difficult.
Yes, it's not affecting my voice now. It's not affecting my voice. You're thinking back two traumatic things. But I managed to get through them. I managed to get through the television. I managed to get through the cabinet.
These years to build a society of opportunity. By that I mean an open society, a society in which what people fulfill will depend upon their talent, their application, and their good fortune.
She had promised that John Major would have her support, and famously, of course, she said, and I paraphrase, John Major's the driver, but don't forget I'm a very good backseat driver. And that did a lot of harm, because she thought that Major wasn't coming down sufficiently hard on one side or other of the European debate, and of course she would have wanted him to be an out-and-out skeptic, and she was disappointed.
Yes, I will have very strong views on both Europe and on Bosnia. I always did, and you know that. I also have very strong views in supporting the Prime Minister. He's out of the ERM. He rejected the social charter.
So Granny will speak out.
I can't imagine Granny not speaking out if she feels very strongly about something.
There are enough opposition politicians and media commentators rocking the boat. We do not expect the elders of our own party to join this unhelpful chorus.
It's the role Lady Thatcher has made her own. Today, centre stage at the annual conference, the party faithful cheering as they do for no other former leader. But it was behind the scenes that the Iron Lady showed the metal for which she became famous, telling a British Airways official in the exhibition hall they should not have replaced the Union flag on their aircraft tails with new multicoloured logos.
We buy the British flag, not those awful things you're putting on tape. Oh, no. Terrible. Absolutely terrible.
Husband Dennis demanded to know why they weren't British design.
British design? Well, we have.
Then, reaching into her famous handbag, Lady Thatcher left British Airways in no doubt about her view of the new design.
Margaret Thatcher is not a person with a great sense of humour, and she's not a person wildly interested in show business. In fact, I think she's fairly ignorant of show business. I don't think going to the cinema really is part and parcel of her way of life. But nor is she a vain person. She'd have been intrigued by the idea of a movie being made of her and would probably be impressed by Meryl Streep's performance.
There have already been, in the last couple of years, dramatic versions of her life and a huge amount of commentary, and this is just one version of the story. It's a story of what it might have felt like to take on, be literally a sort of lone woman in a sea of men. It's what it might have felt like to have to struggle to gain control, first of her party, let alone of the country. And it's very much about the private cost of a huge public life. This is one imagining of how it might have felt to be her.
I think she was conscious of her place in history, conscious that she was there not just making a noise, but making a difference in the world, and yet she wasn't personally vainglorious. She was aware of what she had achieved and that it was remarkable and good.
Quite a long time after Margaret Thatcher, Lady Thatcher as she became, left office at number 10, I had to go and interview her at her new office, which was round the corner, not very far from Parliament, and it was as if she was still in power. There were police guards on the door, there were lots of people scurrying about, and I was taken into her office, very big office indeed, a big desk, lots of pictures on the wall, lots of items on the desk itself. And I was very struck that the theme of almost all of them was the Falklands War.
Oh, I think she's going to be very high up in the list of great British Prime Ministers. I suppose we must always give the accolade to Churchill because winning the Second World War, he is a sort of a magnificent figure. I'd be jolly tempted to put her next to him, frankly. I mean, to be a woman, to do that, to achieve what she did, and to stay in office as long as she did, and the first woman ever to take that office at a time when it was very, very difficult, I think that's pretty impressive.
There are those who see the Thatcher years as the best years since the Second World War, at a time when Britain's influence in the world came back, we dealt with a lot of our problems, we changed society for the better. A lot of people think that. They tend to be people who've done well, who've made more money and have nice houses and so forth. The more privileged people, I think, have done pretty well. A lot of people, on the other hand, who are more humble origins, regret very much the Thatcher years. They think she did damage to the country, and it absolutely depends on how well you did in that period as to what you think of Margaret Thatcher.
I think her impact was enormous. I think she just changed the way that political business was done. The idea, as it were, that we could do everything with a sort of warm, cosy consensus, I think that went forever, and I don't think, actually, it has ever come back.
The one thing to remember about Margaret Thatcher is that politics and power are to her everything. That's really the passion of her life. That's what drove her.
If we were to fail, that freedom could be imperiled. So let us resist the blandishments of the faint hearts. Let us ignore the howls and threats of the extremists. Let us stand together and do our duty, and we shall not fail.